So welcome to our series on using medical data systems for research. This is our third presentation of the series, and this one is titled, as you can see, Introduction to REDCap, Building and Managing Online Surveys and Databases. So let me introduce our speaker today. His name is Matt Armistead, and he is the programmer analyst with the Biomedical Informatics Core of the West Virginia Clinical and Translational Science Institute. He graduated from Carnegie Mellon University with a BS in Information and Decision Systems and is completing a MS in Biostatistics from West Virginia University. He is a Morgantown native. He has a lifelong love-hate relationship with PRT and enjoys playing with his wooden blocks with his 10-year-old son, Anand. He is currently completing a thesis under the advisement of Dr. Dustin Long on a comparison of machine learning methods for sensor time to event outcomes with a focus on electronic health records. So here we go.
Thanks everyone for coming here at WVU and perhaps at CAMC and the osteopathic school as well. I appreciate it. I'm Matt Armistead. As Sam said, I'm with the Biomedical Informatics Core. Today we're going to go over REDCap. This is going to be a baseline introduction for new people. We're going to kind of go over some of the features that you can find in REDCap, why you might want to use it, and then later on we're going to get into a quick demo just to kind of show you how to create a database in REDCap, some of the quick things about inputting data, exporting data, like that. I also wanted to point out, you can see my email address here. I also wanted to point out Jessica Schlitz. She's our graduate assistant. She's a good person to email as well. She's finishing her capstone presentation today and couldn't be with us. Okay, so what is REDCap? REDCap was developed by Vanderbilt in 2009. They were having problems with too many people keeping protected health information in spreadsheets on their local computers. And so their informatics group got together and said, you know, we can come up with a better solution for this. So let's create a web-based database capture program and make it open source and make it available to other institutions, other CTSIs. They published a paper. They eventually got funded by the NIH and the National Center for Research Resources. They have been continued to be funded for, I think, since 2010 and continue to do so. So you can kind of see the welcome here. What is it? It's a secure web application for building and managing both online surveys and online databases. Now, in principle, those are two of the same sort of things. It just depends. Are you sending this out to people, or are you going to have people come in and enter data amongst themselves? The idea is that you can create and design projects in two different ways. You can go on to REDCap and design it, which we will be doing today. But there's also ways where you can just kind of take the Excel sheets that you already have and import that in and create your own instrument. Moving on. So who creates or who uses REDCap? Primarily, it's used by CTSAs, academic organizations, medical centers. Obviously, we're using it here, and our partners are as well. We have around 600 active users. That's primarily staff, faculty, and students. We have about 1,000 total projects going on right now. At this point, we're getting 50 to 100 a month. Worldwide, there are over 300,000 users, 2,500 projects. Right? They have 1,800 institutional partners around the world. You can see in 99 countries. So it's well used, well tested. I don't know where some of these places are, especially up in the North Pacific Ocean, but it's worldwide. Okay, so why would you want to use REDCap? This is going to provide you a tool to, first and foremost, define your forms and define your data. The idea is that you want to create a structure up front so that you're setting up what data that you want to collect and input into this project. Advantages are, you can control access to it. If you have an Excel sheet, there's no way to say I want somebody to have access to parts of it or not the other, or it might be difficult to do so. With this, it's easy to specify I want to add my student on there, but I don't want my student to be able to go through and edit records like I would. We can validate data types with this. So if you're asking for somebody's age and they put in corn, that's not an acceptable answer. We want to be sure that the type of data that you're being put in there is what you're looking for. Names, dates, times. You can even validate proper email structures, phone numbers, international phone numbers, that sort of thing. There are methods to check and query the data. So you can set up methods so that if you want to do reporting on your data, you can run simple queries in REDCap so that you can come up with, say, I want to see patients in my database who have a BMI over certain records, something like that. Stores the data. This is, sounds basic, but it's important how you're storing your data. I know that a lot of us have been getting emails from ITS saying, you might have patient identifiers on your computer. This is not acceptable. REDCap is acceptable. This is where you want to be storing this sort of information so that you're not running into trouble with ITS, keeping it off your computer. And exporting data for analysis, one of REDCap's strengths is that we can export this data in many ways. You're probably working with a statistician. They might be using R, they might be using SAS, they might be using Stata. REDCap's going to export that data into the format that your statistician needs. You need Excel, whatever it might be. It gives you added flexibility. Paul Harris at Vanderbilt was the creator of REDCap, and he said researchers are good people, give them a good tool, and they will do good things. So that's the purpose. So you're a researcher. You want to do a statistical analysis. You want to write a conclusion. You want to get publications out. This costs money. With REDCap, it's a pretty streamlined process. You define the forms in the data. You define your procedures, your events. You set up your user access. You capture the data. You query correct the data. You send it to your statistician. You write the conclusion. You're done. You get your publication out. If you're using a spreadsheet or a custom database that you might have created, sure, you can do the same. You can do that as well. Send that off to your statistician. But when you have a problem, or they have a problem, you're going to kind of go back and forth with this, and back and forth with this, and back and forth with this, and back and forth with this. Eventually, it's going to get back to your statistician, but it's going to take more time. It's going to take more management if you're sending Excel files back and forth to each other. Maybe there's, you're having problems with validation, something that you could have nipped in the bud if you're setting this up correctly in an instrument like REDCap. So our REDCap instance hosts multiple projects, and REDCap can do a lot of different things with your project. Obviously, we're talking primarily about data forms today, setting those up. But those data forms could also be turned into a web survey fairly easily just by enabling surveys. We can send those out multiple ways. Another advantage is that we have activity logging within REDCap. So everything that's happening in your instrument is going to be recorded. It's going to be audited so that you know who's changing what and when. Automatically, can output PDFs of any forms that you're doing, so that if you want to print those out, distribute those by paper, and then come back later on and have input it into your database, you can do so. Again, data importing and exporting, it's flexible with the data that you want to import and flexible with the data you want to export. You can control de-identified data export. So again, if you're working with a student and you don't want them to have, maybe ID, but you don't want them to have an MRN, you can say MRN's PHI, I need that for my purposes, but they don't need that. Yes?
For the data import, from the medical side, are you able to import, say, demographic information from Maryland and our Epic system?
You can, but not directly. The question was for Charleston, can you import data directly from, well, can you import data at all from Epic Merlin into REDCap? And you can. It's just you're going to have to set it up so that it'll take an extra step, just taking that data out of Epic Merlin and putting it into REDCap. And another aspect of the biomedical informatics core, just as a quick aside, is that we do a lot of work with querying data from Epic. And Dr. Mollett and Jeff Cox gave a presentation a couple weeks ago, kind of going over that. But if you have any questions about doing that sort of thing, you can also contact me. Data access groups and multi-site access. We work with a lot of people who use this. If you have a cohort that's really rare of patients and you want to reach out across the country, across the world, to a lot of your partners and all input data into your own instrument because you're going to be the lead on this project, you can do that. But you don't want them to see, you don't want somebody at the University of Washington to be able to see somebody's patients at the University of Iowa or the WVU, vice versa. You can set it up so that they can only see the data that they're inputting or their institution is inputting. And then you, as the admin controller, will have access to all of it, but you can control the rest of it. Custom reporting. REDCap has limited reporting data, or reporting capabilities, pretty basic overview, bar charts, that sort of thing. It can be helpful if you need to do something quick on the fly. If you want to do something more complicated, you probably want to I always recommend pulling the data out and using something you're more comfortable with. Maybe your statisticians are comfortable with. Data quality queries resolution. You can query your data to make sure that something's not in there that is outside the bounds, like of a lab value or something like that, if you want to look at that later on. There's an API interface, so we haven't had a lot of use of this yet, but it's possible out there if you're a developer and you want to interact with the REDCap database, and there are systematic ways where you can write code, writing a Python script or something, you need to pull that data out. It's a little more advanced topic, but it can be done. Branching and skip logic. This is something where, if you ask somebody a question, a yes, no, and then you want to follow up to a yes question, we're going to hide that question so that when they answer the question correctly, it will pop up. Again, formatted export and PHI field registration, or restrictions, excuse me. Dr. Mollett?
So regarding the forms and data input, did you put it on a smartphone?
You're a little ahead of the game. The question was, is there a way to access this on your smartphone? And yes, you can. You can access the website directly through your smartphone, just as it is, as you would on a normal computer. But there is an app out now, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Okay, so this is kind of one of the most important aspects of REDCap is the security. When you're writing up a grant and they're going to ask, or you're going through an IRB, they're asking you lots of questions about your security, what are you going to do with it? REDCap is NIH funded, it's NIH approved software to collect PHI. So you have a standard that's ready to go to write into your IRB. Our data is stored at a HIPAA compliant, the Information Technology Center just got renamed, formerly known as the ROC. This is the same place where all patient data is stored in Epic. So same standards. This is, it's strict access control. They control the environment. There's cameras ever monitoring, multi-million-dollar place. I think it was designed by IBM. Everything's backed up nightly. We have language. If you need to add that to your IRB, we can help you out with that. And we also follow the REDCap consortium guidelines. These are just the guidelines that REDCap wants you to follow, so you can say we follow this, which is basically NIH's guidelines. Usage costs. This is offered as a resource to anybody who's a member of the WVCTSI, and membership is free. So here's a link. Join us. You don't have to be a WVU or CAMC or osteopathic school to join us. Outside, you can be a community member and join us. Anybody can join us. There's going to be no charge for the data or the file storage. I think its max right now is 128 megs per file. So these files are generally something you're going to want to share, like on a survey with somebody. Say, here, take a look at these instructions or something like that. You can have multiple databases per study, as many as you want. Basic technical support and usage guidance is provided by REDCap administrators. You can email me, call me, or Jessica, whose email's in earlier. We'll give you that information again later. If you're interested in study design or analysis services, CTSI can also help you with that. So if you're interested in how you want to set up this survey, what kind of data you want to collect, I'd recommend talking to our CRDEB core, which is Clinical Research Design, Epidemiology, and Biostats. They have a walk-in clinic on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Times are seen here in Health Sciences North. They're a great resource. I'm there on Fridays. Okay, I'm going to go over just some of the features again that we've gone over a little bit before, but just to kind of go a little bit more in depth. Validation again. We've kind of talked about that and how important that would be. We'll show you that when we do the demo. Branching logic. Calculated fields. So if you are entering height and weight into this and you want to show a calculated BMI or just have a calculated BMI already be populated in your database, it's fairly simple to do. There's lots of functions, summation functions, any sort of square root, any sort of math functionality you need. Again, configurable user rights, user groups, record locking if you want to specify certain records locked so that other users don't want to edit it. You can add that. Report building. Graphic visualization tools are really based on the report building. They do have some cool plots where they're kind of interactive and where you can see rollover on the dots, and it will say this is X record, here's a median, that sort of thing. Importing, API, logging. Throughout REDCap, you're going to see integrated instructions. So there's going to be FAQs basically all over the site, in the front page of the site, and then there will be videos that are all over the site. There's a lot of, there's so many institutions that have REDCap now that there are so many great resources online. If you Google something, you're going to have Iowa, Washington, any university is going to have a lot of resources, so kind of pick and choose. Double data entry support. So if you're really, concerned about the quality of data that you're getting in there, and you are having people do data entry, sometimes what people do is if you're hiring somebody, have them overlap on what they're entering, so that you can see to make sure that person A and person B are entering the same thing. REDCap, you can run reports, go back on that and say, were there any errors? Did person A and person B say something different? Project templates. There's a lot of templates available within REDCap. There's a lot of basic demographics, if you need basic demographics, or longitudinal aspects to REDCap. You can, if you want to have a longitudinal study, which is something a little bit more advanced for this talk, but you can set up events and so you go through and if you start a demographic point and you're a baseline and visit 1, visit 2, visit 3, you can do something like that. The shared instrument library, so all the institutions that have REDCap, some people will go out and share their instruments. So there's a lot of briefest instruments, standard instruments that you might run into from all disciplines. I know there's a lot in psychology, kind of standard instruments that people use to query things. Stanford sleep studies. That's all available to you. You can go through there and import that directly into REDCap. Variable piping. So if you're asking somebody their name in an earlier question, and later down you have a question, you will say, so Matt, what do you think about this? What do you think about, would you rate the answer to your second question or something like that? You can put that in, pipe that variable into your question. There's randomization modules. So if you want to collect data on a clinical trial, most people I know, honestly, usually you're going to have your statistician do this. But if it's something simple, you can go into REDCap and set up even a stratified randomization. You can do it by groups, sites, and basically it'll plug that directly into the database ahead of time. Again, longitudinal data models, I think that's something that people are getting more and more into, where you can set up even different arms. So you have drug A, drug B in separate arms, and then longitudinal. I know we have one that has about 60 events in it right now. So you can track who's coming to what, and just repeat forms, so you don't have to re-input the data or recreate the form. You can just say, I'm going to do this 60 times. Survey scheduler, if you want to send out surveys to participants at a specific date and time. REDCap, if you go ahead and input that in, REDCap can go ahead and automate those emails for you and send them out when it's appropriate. And as Dr. Mull was alluding to, we have recently, REDCap came out with a mobile app. It's pretty new. And so we've had a few researchers work with it, there's some difficulties with it. The idea behind it is that we want, researchers are often going out into a field and they might be in rural West Virginia and they might not have access to Wi-Fi or, LTE or internet anywhere. So, but they want to work with the community and collect data. How do you do that? REDCap, this is where the REDCap app comes in. It's available for iOS and Android. So usually people have iPads, something like that. You can create an admin on there, and then you create user accounts within the app so you can distribute them to community workers, something like that, to collect data. They go out, collect the data, give you back the iPad, and you log in as the admin or take it back to anywhere where you can get internet, and then click a button to sync that data back to the project, back to the Ruby Office complex. It's a bit hairy, it's a bit ugly, but it works. They're putting out updates almost weekly at this point, so I'm sure it will get up to speed fairly soon. But if you do have internet, I would just recommend using the main website. Even on mobile, it's pretty good. They made a lot of improvements to it in the past year. Some features that are coming soon that we should be installing probably in months, if not weeks. Text-to-speech functionality. So there'll be, you can add an audio icon next to any question. You just type out the question, and it'll synthesize speech back over the computer to the survey to the respondent. Two-factor authentication we're going to add. We have that right now with the IDR. We're going to implement that with REDCap so that we can, if you want something more secure, you can get a text message with the code on it when you log in. And project folders, you think that's pretty simple and that's something that people would want, but REDCap was very against it for a while. They finally come around in a recent version, so I know some of our faculty and researchers have hundreds of projects and they'd like to categorize them and put them into folders. So that is coming. Again, membership, join us. You have access not just to us, but to the resources of CRDEB and all the other cores. CEO in the audience today, I see. Any information. And if you need an account after you have membership, just email Jessica and she'll turn that around for you quite quickly. So let's get to creating a project. What is the flow of creating a project within REDCap? How do we go about doing this? It's pretty simple. I mean, we're going to create a project. We're going to either have our Excel sheet or we're going to go into the online form designer, which we'll go into shortly. That's going to create forms. And these forms, we could have just one. This could be a simple survey. We could have an intake form and then send out a survey to somebody else, or it could be longitudinal with many events. I encourage everybody to test out their forms at that point in time. It's something that we run into a lot. People want to make changes that might affect the data in the long term. If you're halfway through data collection and you want to change everything up, you don't want to make it so you have as the data was collected prior to this point, if you're switching around different categories or using different scales, and then after that point, it's going to make it complicated for your statisticians, it's going to make it complicated for your analysis. Then you're going to go ahead and add your users, whoever's on your team. And then once it's tested and you're happy with how the form is, then you move to what REDCap calls production mode. And that production mode is kind of locking down your instrument, saying we are collecting data now. We're not, any changes that we do make to the form are going to be minimal. Minimal meaning I'm only going to add information to it. I'm not going to go back and change things that have already been collected. And then you're going to start data collection. So let's do that. Let's go into REDCap and create a quick form. Oh, good, I didn't get logged out. So this is the front page of REDCap. You can see it has, here's the tab for the help and FAQ. There's a lot of good information in here. If you have kind of any questions, this is the first place even I go usually. Training and resources, there's lots of videos for basically any part of REDCap that you're interested in. These are all created by Vanderbilt. You can see there's many sections, different types of projects, some of the special features, some of the more advanced topics. But you can also find these videos within the instrument. So let's just create a new project. So presentation demo. Purpose of this project, if it's a research project, you can collect this information if you want. This is basically just for us. You don't have to do it. This is just for fun. And let's use a template. Here are some of the templates available to us. Cancer tissue biobank, examples of longitudinal databases, surveys, a piping example, RCTs. We'll just do a basic demography form here. Okay, so we've created a project. This project has no data, has no forms, or has the basic demography form. So let's just go ahead and start to look at that. You can see where, if you want to set it up to enable longitudinal data collection or surveys, you do that in project settings up here. So basically, you can just turn it on, turn it off as you want. The meat of it is in the online designer right here. So this shows you your different forms. We go into the basic demography form, and this is where you'll actually be creating your instrument. We start with the study ID because if you think about it, each row is going to need a unique ID. REDCap's got to plug that in. Go ahead and do that for you somewhere so you have some sort of identifier. We can kind of go through and see, oh, here's the link to the video. You see these on each page you'll go to, just if you ever run into any problems. It's usually in the upper right-hand corner. So if we wanted to, you can see we already have some fields added for us, first names, last names, street, phone number, etc. If you wanted to add a field, you can go in here and you can see the different field types that REDCap offers for you. And again, a video, text box, notes boxes, the calculate fields we talked about where you want to calculate BMI or something like that. Different types of multiple choice if you want to do a drop-down list, a radio button, checkboxes if you want to allow for multiple answers to a single question, a simple yes, no, or true, false. Signature, I haven't had many people use that, but you can, if you have a tablet or something like that, you can record whatever you draw on that. File upload, so users, when you fill out the form for CTSI membership, they'll ask you for your CV. That's a file upload. A slider analog scale, if you want to do 1 to 100, something a little more sensitive, you don't want somebody just type in a random number, you can kind of have the slider there. Descriptive text, and even SQL. Okay, so let's just look through, let's just pick one here. So email address. Email address, this is going to be a text box. We're asking for an email address. You can specify a validation. We know that what needs to be in here is an email address. Doesn't need to be a name. It's got to have an @ It's got to have a domain. You can see the other ones that we have available to us: dates, integers, letters only, numbers, zip codes, etc. You can set if fields are required. This is something that's mandatory. An identifier. This is an important field if you're going to be working with PHI. You want to make sure that you're specifying PHI within your database. And so this is the controller that's going to be, if you want to share your data with somebody else, but you want to strip those identifiers, this is what it's going to look for. It doesn't know automatically that this is going to be a name. You're going to specify that. REDCap doesn't have a lot of visual edits you can do. You can set the alignment, but they try to keep it pretty basic. It's not supposed to be something that's, you're going to do a huge edit. So you can add your own like a CTSI logo or something like that to the top. And then field notes, field annotations. This is for the user filling it out. This is for yourself. Here's an example of a multiple choice ethnicity. You can see the choices here: Hispanic, Latino, not Hispanic, Latino, unknown, not reported. The way that REDCap sets this up, as you can see right here, is it's going to be the value and then the key. So 0, when you pull this data out, and you're looking at it, or your statistician's looking at it, if somebody it says they're Hispanic Latino, it's not going to say Hispanic Latino. That's not what your statistician wants. They just want some sort of key, and that's going to be 0. You can specify your keys. So if you wanted to change this to a 4 for whatever reason, you could do it. But automatically, it will set it up for you. Again, REDCap is pretty helpful. It will tell you, how do I manually code these choices? You can kind of go through and see here. BMI, here's the classic example. The respondent's entered their height, the respondent has entered their weight, and then they're going to go in, and here's the calculation for BMI. You can see this is what REDCap refers to as piping. This is pulling that weight variable and inputting that into that equation. Same with the height. I'm not sure that's the correct equation, but it's what they have. We could, let's see, age of this thing. If we wanted to, if we wanted to ask somebody if they've ever had children, we could add a question like that. We could ask them, are you a mother? And that could be a yes/no question. Variable mother, it's not required. But that's not a question that we need a male to answer. So what we want to do is we want to use the branching logic. Just a quick example of that. It's pretty easy just to do the drag and drop logic. So we're concerned about sex. We want it where sex equals female. You can kind of do an and or sort of thing if you want to add multiple options. Are all these below true or any of these below true? If you want to get more advanced, which some people do, the syntax is pretty straightforward. They give you a few more options. You can kind of go through and write it up yourself. Again, the same sort of piping logic where sex is input here. It's going to be equal to 0. This is something that people run into a lot. They expect it 0 to be a number, but 0 is actually going to be a string, which you need to put in double quotes. So show the field only if female is true. We can save that. And so now that question is not going to pop up until somebody asks for female. So that's a basic demographic form, I think. Do you guys have any questions about that? So right now, it's not a survey. If you recall back here, we said we could use surveys in this project. So right now, it's just a data collection form. Nobody can get to this form unless you've given them access in REDCap. So if you wanted to make it a public form, you would just click here and say enable a survey. You can see they give you options about the survey instructions you want to include, numbering, expiration on the survey. If you want to redirect to another URL, you want to redirect to your website after filling out a REDCap form, you can do that. Survey active now, your changes have been saved. Often you're going to want a PDF of your form. So if you need that, REDCap can provide that for you here. Just click that. It's going to automatically generate and download a PDF. It's basically the same sort of formatting as what you'll see in the survey. You can print these off, send these off to people, etc. So if you want to control the user rights, there's a lot of different options, a lot of different ways. Right now, I'm the only one who has access to this, but if we wanted to add, for example, Jessica, we can add her, and you can see the different rights we can control around that. Expiration date, when they're going to be off this project. Do you want them to have design privileges? Do you want them to have privileges to edit other user rights? Do you want them to have privileges to set up those data access groups that we talked about, where you might have, control who's going to be joining the project from other sites? Do you want them to control, very granular things such as, what sort of exporting of data can they do? Can they even create reports? Do you want to manage survey participants? Set up for the API, importing tool, etc. So you can see there's a lot of depth and a lot of granularity to REDCap that you can really spend a lot of time on and get more advanced into. Again, you can add multiple projects, but for this case, let's just go ahead and take this and say we've gone through, we've looked at the form, we're happy with what we're collecting. We've tested it out. We've had other people look at it. Let's say we're done. Let's move it to production. So we just go down here. This is the final step. Move it into production. REDCap's going to warn you and say, "I'm going to delete everything out of this now. All this test data you've been entering, any survey responses, it's going to be gone, and I'm going to lock it down. Yes, move it to production. Are you sure? Yes. Great. Now we're in production. Now we can start data collection." And as we've done all these things, we can just go right here to manage survey participants. Since this is a public survey, we can just go ahead and send this URL out. But there are different ways you can send to participants if you want to make it not so public, but send it out to only a specific cohort of people. If you have a list of email addresses and tie those email addresses to the responses, that's something you can do as well. But let's take a look at this public survey now. Again, fairly simple. Here's all the data you can enter. Test that out. There you go. Only shows up if it's a female. The BMI, 175. I'm not sure how many kilograms I am. So 70. BMI 22. So this data is not only presented to the user, but it was saved in your database. Submit it. Thank you. So basically, that's how you would create a quick form. After you've done all that and you want to export your data, again, I just want to show you really quickly, there's a lot of options available to you. CSV includes SPSS now, SAS, ARS, data, whatever format you want to get your data out into, and however you want to limit it by removing the record ID. You can even hash the record ID, so if you want to make a new unique ID, but for that export that you can tie back to the original ID, but for whatever reason you don't want whoever you're sharing it with to have that ID, you can do that. Anything that's unvalidated, remove dates and times, or even date shift. So if you have a lab result, but you still want your for whatever reason your statistician cannot see that date, but they still want to be able to do analysis on it, you could do a date shift, so that the perspective of the relationship between two dates is still the same. And survey identifiers, survey timestamps. So that's kind of the basic, front to back, how you might create a data form in REDCap, and how you can collect data, export data, that sort of thing. Go back to the PowerPoint. So what are the goals of REDCap? Hopefully it's easy to use. I think it's getting easier to use and making more sense. Luckily, if you do have problems, there are ample resources available to you. They say it's metadata driven. The idea is that you're collecting data about data often. It's pretty adaptable, and it's getting more and more adaptable. They have pretty healthy funding from the NIH, and they put out updates weekly, bug fixes. So they're fairly responding to people's concerns, and we can talk to them for you, and I've done that before, if you have an idea that you want to share. And data entry validation, I think that's something that is a really important goal of REDCap, so that, versus using something like an Excel sheet or any other database really, is that you want to make sure that you're putting in the correct data for that field. And so REDCap's a self-service tool. It's user-driven. We can support you with any help you need. Just send us an email. But the idea is so that we're giving you a tool so that you go through and create projects, and people are. We have usually 25 people logging in a day, updating, creating tools, creating projects, collecting data, survey respondents. It's pretty well used. Again, if you have any problems, send us an email. Give me a call. We're here for you to help you out with this. We want to make sure that we can get your research, the data collected, analyzed, and so we can have publications. So thanks. I just wanted to acknowledge that we're supported by a CTSA grant, and any support that we provide for you through REDCap, we ask that you acknowledge CTSI on any publications that result of it. So thank you very much. If you guys have any questions, I'll be here to answer them. I have my card up here as well if you need my email address. We weren't able to get it off the form. Dr. Mullen?
Quick comment about REDCap versus SurveyMonkey versus Qualtrics.
Yeah. SurveyMonkey is definitely something you should not be using. It's not serviced by WVU. This is on a private network. This data is not secure. You would not be approved. If you write, I'm going to collect this in SurveyMonkey and I'm going to collect patient data, you're not going to get it funded. So Qualtrics is WVU supported, but it's not built for PHI. So there's nothing wrong with using Qualtrics if you're more comfortable with it. But if you're going to collect any information that's going to have any PHI, any of those 18 identifiers in it, you really need to be using REDCap. That's why it's specifically here for that. You're going to be able to have a much easier time with your funding institution if you're going that route. Any other questions? Well, thanks for coming. Thanks, Charleston. Thanks to the Osteopathic School and anybody else out there. My email is on the website, and I have cards up here if you need